Welcome to Men's Lifeline. My name is Zach, and I want to welcome you to the Men of Action, where we take men who've overcome the trials and the storms of life to unlock that inner warrior that they always knew they were. They just need a little bit of help and the guiding force to achieve it, where they were able to go from a zero to a hero. And I got a special guest for you. I have Chris Oldham right here and a guest. This is his first ever podcast. So, Chris, welcome to the show, man.
Yo, what's up, man? It's good to be here. So I guess like a little bit about me, my name's Chris Oldham. I'm a cybersecurity engineer for my day job. I spend a lot of time on Twitter proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm a sinner that was saved, and it was strictly through the forgiveness that Jesus gave me through his actions on the cross. And I'm involved with my life group that I love dearly, a bunch of men that are committed to growing and loving each other the way that God commands us to in the Bible. I'm active in my church. I serve in the student ministry and the kids ministry. And man, I'm just out here living life, loving it, trying to be a light for people and encouraging other men to step into their God-given purposes. And that's all about me.
No, that's awesome. They use your faith to really help you be that guiding force to really help you through this life, through the storms that has happened to you. So how long have you been like a Christian for?
Yeah, so I was actually saved October 10th, 2019. I was in a Panera Bread of all places. Before that, I had been struggling with different things, primarily depression and double-mindedness. The depression stemmed from a lot of things in my life that had happened growing up, kind of starting way back early, even when I was, 8, 9 years old. But some of the big things that kind of moved that depression into my life and caused me to go down that road were the death of my mother shortly before I left for the Navy. And then while I was in the Navy, about a year before that, I got out, the death of my father. And at the time I was married and the relationship just was not going well. And so when my father died and me being in this, pretty bad marriage at the time, it just sent me into this spiraling depression. And I started drinking really heavily, more so than I had drank earlier in my Navy career. And it was not trying to have fun, but really just trying to drown those feelings and numb the pain that I was experiencing. And so that depression, I was on antidepressants for a long time. I got out of the Navy and I moved here to Dallas with my wife that I was married to at the time. And, a lot of things just kind of continued to happen. Our relationship never really got better. At one point, I left for Florida and I was basically running from all of the pain and the suffering that I was feeling at that moment. And I thought if I moved to Florida, things were going to get better, right? I could just escape, the bad marriage that I was in, and I could escape kind of the regrets that I had with different things that were going on in my life at the time. And when I got to Florida, I realized that all that stuff still existed, right? And the double-mindedness in me still existed as well. And I'll get more into what double-mindedness is. Mm-hmm. But while I was there, I realized that it didn't really get better. In fact, it was worse than it was before, because now I had the idea that like I had just left my wife in Dallas, right? And so like that kind of broke me as a man, because I just felt like that wasn't the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up coming back. And then maybe like 10 days later, I met up with the men's minister at this church that I had been involved with. And at the time, I didn't even really know I wasn't confident that Jesus was even a real person. Okay. I didn't know where the Bible came from. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so I just sat down with him and had a conversation with him and started asking him these questions. And that day I was born again. I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit, an overwhelming encounter with the Holy Spirit. He literally overcame me. I was shaking, I was crying, I was laughing. I was like, what is happening to me? What is happening to me? And my men's minister at the time, his name is Jordan, he was just like, that's the Holy Spirit, bro. Like, that's the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit in you. And he's jumping up, dancing, and there's people eating sandwiches all around us, like looking at us like we're crazy. And I just remember like I had my arms like reached out and I was like, I get it. I finally get it. I finally get it. It was like the veil was lifted,
Mm.
and like the depression, the anxiety, the shame, the guilt, everything that I had carried with me literally got pushed. Like it felt like it all went out the back of me, and the Holy Spirit had made a home inside of me. And I
Oh,
walked
wow.
into that Panera Bread a different person than I walked out of that Panera Bread. Uh, I never took antidepressants again a day of my life. My mindset shifted towards sin, towards my like desires that I had once had. I no longer had my relationships with people. It all changed in an instant, thanks to Jesus Christ. So, that's my kind of short story to salvation. But since that day, I've just lived in Jesus Christ's goodness, right? His grace, his peace, his love, everything that he's given us. Like I just continue to live in that. And I
Hmm.
want to share it with others because I know what it feels like to go through struggles and to go through things apart from him. And I've also experienced struggles being with him. And I could tell you without a doubt, it's much better. It is a much better experience when you have Jesus Christ there to walk with you.
That's that's incredible, man. That's an incredible story going from, handling the loss of your mom and dad and everything. That's not, I mean, as someone I work with that on a daily basis, that's not easy.
No,
Can
it,
feel very just lost and uncertain where to go.
yeah. Especially like, so with my mom, it was really tough because she was an alcoholic growing up. Like I grew up in bars. From the time I was 7 years old,
Oh my
I
gosh.
was at the bar with my mom, right, and my stepdad, and they would be drinking, getting drunk with their friends, right, whatever they were doing, and I would always either be hanging out, playing shuffleboard or playing pool, or I'd be out back, throwing bottle caps, or doing something just to occupy my time. And I always saw it as just a normal way to live because I
Hmm.
didn't know any other way. And as I got older, I started to kind of be able to stay home by myself. And so I separated myself from going to the bars with my mom, but my mom never separated herself from that. And so she just continued down that path. And throughout my teenage years, my mom was heavily influenced by alcohol. She would drink pretty much on a daily basis. There were times that I would have to actually pick her up from the bar, or I would have to drive her home from the bar.
Oh my.
And then as I got older, maybe around the age of 13, 14, and I'm going to get really real here because I
All
want to
right.
make sure that people understand where I come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I didn't have an influence. Like I didn't have a positive influence in my life. I didn't have adults in my life speaking to me on a daily basis. There were a few people here and there that I would reach out to, but as far as parents, I did not have that. And so what happened as a result was when I was 13, I started smoking weed with my friends, right?
Oh,
By 14, 15, I was drinking with my friends. I was going to house parties. We were going to the gas station and buying like whatever alcohol we could get, right? We would get
sure.
people that were older than us to buy it for us, different things like that. And I remember there were times when I would come home drunk as like a 16-year-old, and I would be stumbling into the yard with my mom, who was also stumbling into the yard because she had been out drinking, right? Like crazy, very
Yes.
dysfunctional, absolutely uh, unacceptable. And looking back, but it was just an experience that I had to go through based on the situation that I was in. And so for a long time, I resented my mom. And when she got diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, I almost felt like she deserved it,
Oh
right?
my God.
I had this mindset where I was like, you get what you deserve.
Hmm.
You made that bed, now lay in it. And it like never really brought me joy seeing the pain and the suffering that came with that cirrhosis that she was dealing with. But I was almost indifferent, right? Like I just didn't
Hmm.
really like care for a long time. But then, so my mom suffered with it for about 3 years before her death. And I remember there was a shift in my mindset probably a year and a half, 2 years in, where I saw the changes that my mom was making. She really, truly wanted to live. And uh, I saw her start to show up to family events
Hmm.
more. Her and I were spending more time together. We were playing cards or dominoes or something like that. And um, I just like began to see that like she kind of regretted what she had done and the life that she had lived, and she truly wanted to continue to live past and through the cirrhosis, and so she did what she could so that she could be put on the list for a transplant. And uh, looking back, like those 3 years were probably some of the best 3 years that I ever had with my mom, because at this time, like I had this time with her and I was getting to know her and we were laughing together. And even in her sickness, she was like joyful, right? I have a tattoo on my side here, and it's just
Hmm.
a sun, and it says, "You are my sunshine." And I know a lot of people look at that and they're like, "Why do you have that on you?" And it's because there was a really great memory that I have of my mother where we were in the hospital, and this was towards the end of her life. She had a nurse named Sunshine, and it
Oh
was
my
this,
gosh.
yeah, and it was this young, like beautiful nurse, and she was always like really happy, and she would come in, and my mom loved her name, so like every time, like my mom was hooked up to all kinds of things like IVs and stuff, and this lady would walk in and she would start singing "You Are My Sunshine" to her. And it was just like really beautiful moment and a memory that I'll carry with me forever. And so I got that tattooed on me because I just think when I think back about my mom and everything that she was before she got diagnosed, and then all the suffering that she went through, I I like to remember the good moments. And I just remember seeing my mom smile and the happiness that that brought her. So yeah, towards the end of her life, she was in the hospital for probably 6 months. If I had like, it was about
Oh my
six
gosh.
months
It's a long
straight.
time.
Yeah, like everything started to fail in her body. So cirrhosis of the liver is not a friendly disease whatsoever. A lot of people don't realize how it progresses and how it gets worse. So your kidneys start to fail, right? You're not
Hmm.
able you're not able to like process a lot of the fluids and stuff that you intake. So you have to change your eating habits. And my mom's stomach would swell up with this fluid, and it would happen more and more as time went on. But she would literally have to go and what they call getting drained. And so they put a needle in you and they drain this bile off of your abdomen. And like she would look pregnant, and then they would
Right.
drain like 9 liters of this bile. And then 2 weeks later, she would have to go back in because it filled up again. And
Within 2 weeks, it filled up that
yeah,
much.
yes. And it was like every 2 weeks, she was having to get like 9 liters of this like gross bile stuff drained off of her body. And I would go with her all the time to do this because I didn't want her to be alone. Uh, Side note, like while I was going to the hospital with her to do this kind of stuff,
Hmm.
oftentimes I gave more blood during that time than ever, because as soon as like every time I got a chance to, like they would let me because I got free parking and
Oh.
parking really expensive. So I would always like, right, go and try to give blood to get free parking. But anyways, so
It's weird that they would charge you for parking.
yeah, oh yeah, they charge for everything at a hospital. They don't play around.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but yeah, so she just kind of like suffered like that last 6 months were some of the hardest months because they had reduced her fluid intake so much that she was allowed like, I hold this up, like that much water in a day,
And
right?
that
That's all that they would let her drink. And she was so thirsty. She was so dehydrated. Her mouth
right.
was so dry. I would go in there and she would be like, I wouldn't take drinks or anything because I didn't want to put that in front of her. But she would
Oh
ask
sure.
me, she's like, give me some water, give me some water. I'm like, Mom, we can't. The doctors say you can't have that. Like, if you're going to live long enough to get this liver, we can't give you water right now. Like, I know, I'm sorry you're thirsty, but like, I want to listen to the doctors. And then she would get
Right.
kind of not violent, but like confrontational with me, and she's like, well, you don't love me, you don't care about me, I'm thirsty. And I'd be like, Mom, I really would love to give you water, but I want to listen to the doctors. And then sometimes she would sneak into the bathroom and she would take paper towels and hold them under the water and wet them and then drink water through that. Like I would catch her doing that sometimes
Oh my
because she
gosh.
was so thirsty. And then her kidney started to fail. So then she's like on these like dialysis machines and
Mhm.
all these things, right? Keeping her alive. And I remember like, so she went into surgery one morning and they were like, you know, we got a liver for her, and we were all really excited. But then they brought her back out, and they were just like, you know what, she's too sick, she can't receive this liver. Like we have to give it to somebody who's going to be able to accept it. And they asked us, do you want us to keep her comfortable and keep her somewhat sedated, or would you rather her wake up fully but be in intense pain? And in that moment, it was a very easy decision. We wanted to keep her comfortable and keep her properly, like, or somewhat sedated. And so that's what they did. And yeah, that day, you know, everybody kind of started rushing to the hospital, the ones that weren't there, part of my family, to say their goodbyes. And I laid with my mom as she took her last breath that day. And it was just like one of the worst days of my life, seeing how much effort that my mom had put into kind of correcting
Mhm.
her mistakes and it not panning out. And it just hurt me because at that moment, like I just saw her, and I wasn't even a Christian at the time, but I just saw her as like a normal human being that had let things like addiction kind of take over her life. And it wasn't something that like she necessarily chose on a daily basis, because I know how addiction works, and I see how
Mhm.
people justify it and how much of a chain it can be. And it's really hard to escape an addiction once you're in it, and it takes more than just willpower. Like you almost have to have people literally pull you out of it. And that was something that maybe our family could have uh, done better at,
Mhm.
right? A lot of us during her alcoholism would not necessarily condemn her, but we all just like we would say our piece, like we would say what we wanted to say to her, but then we would leave it at that. We never took proactive actions and to pull her out. Like we could have put her in a rehab or something like that,
Right.
and none of us really did that. And you know, obviously I have regrets, but I was just a teenager. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I
Yeah, I mean,
will
how
never.
would you? I mean, seriously, how would you know what to do? I mean, you didn't really know about rehabs, or I mean, you might have heard of like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and things like
Right,
that in the 12-step program. But when
right.
you're a teenager, there's only so much you know.
Right. And so like at this point I'm 20 years old. My mom just died. I've already joined the Navy at the time. Like I failed my first 2 years of college, and I have about 4 months before I leave for boot camp. And I was laid up on a couch for like 2 of those months. Like I didn't move at all. I was staying with some friends of the family, and they were taking care of me, making sure I ate and things like that. And then probably a month before I left for boot camp, they were like, "You got to get up off the couch. Like you got to get moving again, right? Like you're about to leave
Right.
the Navy. You can't be in this mindset when you go there." And so I actually got a job at Whataburger, and and I don't know if you know what Whataburger is where you live, but it's really big down here in Texas.
Mm.
And I got a Huffy bike because I didn't have any vehicle, I didn't have any money, and so I was riding a bike like 5 miles to work every morning.
Oh my
I did the
gosh.
early shift. Yeah, I did the early shift, and I would get there at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and you know I would help set up, and I had my favorite customers. They were always old people that would come in and drink coffee, and they
Yeah.
bring like bags of pecans and different things like that. It was really cool. And I worked there, and I mean, it was like 3 weeks in, I started to like, I was like in it, man, and I was having fun, and like, I finally was starting to feel happiness again, and more like kind of like a sense of purpose,
Hmm.
right? Still healing from the death of my mom, but it definitely helped set me up for having the right attitude going into boot camp, because when I went into boot camp, I had to go in um, not carrying that weight that I was carrying before about my mom's death, because it would have just absolutely destroyed me.
Right.
And so I went in and I just had like this like really good mindset about, I'm here for a purpose. I actually have a future in the Navy, right? I can make a career out of this if
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I want to do. Had discipline, had 3 square meals a day. So that was a blessing. Just everything about it. And yeah, that just kind of launched me into my Navy career. But man, like, talk about like losing your mom. Like, I know a lot of people go through that. Everybody does eventually at one point in their life, some at a younger age, some at an older age, but it's not easy no matter what age you lose your mother. But I mean, it's something that we experience, and uh, you know, we just have to somewhat prepare ourselves for, and just understand that, that's what life is, right? It's about life and death. It's
Yeah.
just of life. So
I gotta say, I mean, I just appreciate your honesty and just being raw and just being open and sharing all this pain that you've had to work through. I know you mentioned like kind of having resentment for your mom. I mean, how's that been now, like since you've been like a Christian and really learning about like forgiveness, and
yeah. So
how's that been
yeah,
for you?
yeah, absolutely, bro. So uh, looking back, like I said, I already started to have those feelings towards her towards the end
Hmm.
of her life, where I saw her just as like a person who
Right.
got caught up in addiction. Now I see that it was sin that was keeping her there, right? And
Hmm.
there wasn't any grace in her life, not from me, not from my family, not from my stepfather, right? There was no grace, there was no forgiveness for her, which drove her, I think, further into sin.
Hmm.
And looking back, I just love my mom for who she was. I did have a roof over my head. I did have food in my belly. And those last 3 years that I had with her were absolutely incredible as far as getting to know my mom and building that relationship. And so when I look back, I focus on the good memories, specific, it's like the one with the "You Are My Sunshine,"
Yeah,
and
I love that one, by the way. That's just
yeah,
that's like probably the most precious thing I've heard all day, and I no joke, seriously, it's
yeah,
like so precious.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I just forgive her, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing about Jesus Christ, is like, he forgives us when we sin and when we mess up and when we sin against others, and that's what we're expected to do uh,
Hmm.
for other people. And so I've reconciled my mom's death through that, and that also, becoming a Christian, helped me reconcile my dad's death too, because that was another one that one hit me really, really hard. And I think it was because I was in a bad marriage at the time as well.
Hmm.
And my dad was a Christian, uh, and he used to, preach Jesus to me all the time, and I never really understood it. I didn't. He would tell me Jesus loves you, right? Jesus forgives you. He's there with you, and it just never really made sense to me.
Sure.
And when he died, I was pretty broken up, because he died of a drug overdose.
Oh my
And
God.
again, I'm like, man, like, why is addiction just keep like wrecking the people in my life, right? Like, why do they keep
Yeah.
making these choices to do that? And uh, to get like on that road to addiction. And yeah, I carried that with me for a while until I was saved. And finally, like, after I was saved, I like started thinking back, and I was able to forgive my dad, because again, I saw that, it was Satan that was behind the scenes manipulating him, and it was the sin that had a grasp on him, that he just wasn't able to escape, right? Like,
Right.
uh,
Well,
I think
addiction's hard. I
yeah,
mean, addiction is, I mean, that drug becomes the center focus of everything. I mean, it changes the brain, changes the chemistry,
yeah.
and
You
especially
make
since,
excuses, and you'll justify it all day long, right?
right.
you'll say, oh well, it's not an addiction. Like my mom used to tell me all the time, she's like, uh I'm not addicted to alcohol because I don't drink in the morning. That was what she would tell me. And I'm
So
like,
she must have saw someone who would literally drink in the morning and was like, yep, that's an alcoholic.
yes, right.
Type of
But
thing.
she didn't see that drinking every night was
Right.
still alcoholism. Right. And so like you justify that stuff.
You do. And it's hard because a lot of times pain is one of the most difficult things for anyone to endure.
Yeah.
And depending on what kind of background your mom had, your dad had, to cover up and mask that pain is what drugs are known for.
Right.
You
It's
know?
an empty, it's definitely a way to like try to fill yourself up with something that's going to leave you empty. And it's like
Right.
that with all sin, right? Once you
Oh,
become a Christian,
absolutely.
you realize that everything, all the things that you think are filling you up are really just like fast food for your soul, right? Like they might,
Ooh, preach, man.
yeah, they might just give you that momentary satisfaction, but it's actually making you sicker and killing you
Yeah.
in the long run. And
Tastes
so,
good in the moment, sour the next.
yes, exactly, right? Like that's why, you know, like promiscuity, right? And just like casually sleeping around with
Mm,
people, like like you might feel good in the moment, but no one can deny the fact that when you're laying in bed that night by yourself, you don't feel some kind of disgust or some kind of
right.
loneliness or something, right? Because that's what it does. Like Satan loves to like present sin as something good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it does look good, and sin is pleasurable. That's why it's so enticing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much temptation to want to go to sin because it's pleasurable, but it doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't sustain you, right? It doesn't give you true peace, true fulfillment. It actually separates you from the only one who can give you those things, and that's Jesus Christ, right?
That's
That's
right.
God,
Right,
right?
brother.
So it's a completely different mindset once you're a Christian to sin. And when you've been born again and filled with the Holy Spirit, like now you have a helper, you have someone there to give you discernment and to help you see when you might be stepping into something, right? Like a lot of people will think, oh, like if I'm a Christian and I do this, I'm stepping out of line, right? And
Right.
that's not what it is. It's not what it is at all. Excuse me. You're not stepping out of line. What you're doing when you're stepping into something that's going to harm you, right? God puts up boundaries not because he doesn't want us to have fun. He's protecting us,
Right.
right? He's keeping us in that peace and that fulfillment that he can give us. And if we step out of what he had, those boundaries he's put us in, now we're outside of his will, right? Like God can't be in the presence of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wants us to remain in him, and to do that we have to remain out of sin, right? And so
Right. Which
yeah,
is not easy, especially when you really get to understand what a sin is, when you get angry or
right.
just even look, right?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
get you in big
because like,
trouble.
right, exactly, right? Like lusting after somebody, that's a sin, right? Because if you had the opportunity, people think it's like a thought crime, right? To lust or to be angry, and that's a sin. But it's
Right.
like, no, because if you're lusting or if you're angry at somebody and you had the opportunity to murder them, you probably would, right? Like that's why when Jesus talks about the you know the different sins, he's like, I'm not abolishing the law, I'm fulfilling it. And
There we go.
even lusting or being angry at somebody is the same as doing XYZ. It's because if given the opportunity, we would.
And just kind of wrapping things up, and I want to address this because we just have a few moments left.
Yeah.
Is you mentioned in the beginning you were talking about double-mindedness. So could you just like in a minute
Yeah.
kind of define what double-mindedness is, and then how are you impacting your family, your friends, and then you and your community? I would love to hear that as we kind of wrap things up a little bit, and then kind of some final thoughts that you have for the audience.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So I just go on rambles, and I know this is
No,
my first
you're
podcast,
cool.
so
No, I love your story, man. But just out of respect for your times, I know it's
yeah.
getting close, and just a little bit of transparency.
Right.
There's only about like 8 minutes and 30 seconds off Zoom that we can record for before it shuts off. So,
Nice. Okay. We'll have to do this again.
oh, I'd love to have you
Right.
back on again. And there's just
Yeah.
so much to like dive deep, especially since I'm in the world of mental health and as a clinical therapist. So I'm in this on a daily basis.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share what double-mindedness is. So what double-mindedness is uh, it's almost like you have two persons inside of you. So one person will want to do the righteous thing, will want to live a moral life,
Mm-hmm.
and you will actually feel like you really want to live that life. And there's so much more I could go into about this. And then you'll have this other part of you that wants to do like sinful things, wants to go out and drink and party
Mm-hmm.
and drugs and all those kind of things. And that part of you oftentimes will take control, and it's almost like you can't even fight it, right? It's like a whole
Yeah.
nother part of you. And then the next day you'll wake up and you're like, oh man, I'm going to do good again. I'm going to do righteous things. I'm going to go hang out with righteous friends that are living moral, healthy lives. And then Thursday, Friday rolls around, and now you're like, oh man, now I want to go do all this other stuff that's really bad that I would never even tell my friends on the other
Right.
side about. So that's what double-mindedness is. It's like, and when you're suffering with double-mindedness, you're almost like being tossed around by waves, right? Like it talks about that in the
Mm.
Bible. It's like you can be manipulated to go either direction based on who you're around. And it's just not a very stable way to live. And from my experience, the only way to cure that double-mindedness is by accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and being born again, right? He can do that for you. He can cure those things for you. But you have to humble yourself and trust in the promises that He's made as far as living a sinless life, dying on the cross, paying the price for our sins, and giving us that ability to have a relationship with God the Father again, as long as we put our faith in Him. And you have to put all of your faith, you have to put all of your trust in
Right.
the promises and the things that Jesus did on the cross. And if you do that, He will deliver you from all of those things. He can, and He has the will to do it, and He has the power to do it.
We just need to be obedient to do it.
Yes,
And it's
absolutely.
why it's a relationship and us doing things together versus just being told. And that's when you kind of get a little bit into free will into the mixer too.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely do this again.
Yeah,
This is
there's a
awesome.
lot. Yeah,
I can't believe this is. I'm not gonna lie. I can't believe this is like your first time doing a podcast and talking about it because you're very elegant. You're flowing very good and like, dude,
I appreciate
gotta bring you back on again. I'm sure everyone's gonna love it.
it. I could talk to you for like 4 hours, and like the problem is like my brain is all over the place, and my thoughts go a million different directions, and so sometimes I don't feel like I make a full complete story. I'll just kind of like jump around, and I'll talk about things that I wasn't even planning on talking about. So yeah, man, like there's just
Hey,
so
that's
much.
the whole purpose of this podcast. That's why, to encourage men, to help men, just have some brotherhood here and just have a conversation. That way it's not too scripted. Just let's see where the conversation goes. Let's have fun with this. This is us trying to be a light to other men who are struggling out there. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast. So that we can show people that you can be a man of action. You can go from
Right.
struggling to being a hero. And this is your story.
Right.
That's why your story is so incredible because it's your own personal story.
How much time do we have left?
Less than 5 minutes.
Less than 5 minutes. Okay, so kind of final thoughts, right?
Yes.
Um, aside from accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you have to do that. It's the best thing that you could ever do in your life, right? Uh, I encourage men to not be ashamed of the things that they're going through, because we all go through struggles. A lot of times we struggle with things and we think we're the only ones that are struggling with that, when the person literally sitting right next to us could be going through the exact same thing. And it's so important that we lean on our brothers and we express to them how we're feeling. It's okay to have emotions, right? It's okay to cry. It's okay to do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of accounts on Twitter
Amen.
that tell you that it's not okay. It absolutely is okay to do that. And to seek community, that's another really big aspect of my message. And I encourage you to not only seek online community through, maybe some of the things you see on Twitter or through Facebook, right? But to seek an in-person community, because nothing beats having people in your physical presence that you can actually lean on. You can put your hand around their shoulder
Mm.
and pray with, right? That you can hug, that you can like just be with, right? So I always encourage to get in the community both online and in person. If anybody ever has any questions about how to do that, they can obviously reach out to me. I want to help people. I think a lot of people don't know where to start. If you can't find a community that you fit into or that you enjoy, you can always build your own community. And it's not as hard as it seems. It's really not. There's tons
It's
of
just a lot of
resources.
grind, as we both know. It's a lot of grind.
It's a lot of grind, but there are different ways that you can do
Right.
that. I started a park workout because I didn't have any friends. And guess what? I've made a lot of friends just from doing a park workout.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
and I can go into detail on how I did that. I know I've made a thread about community on my Twitter profile, but if anybody has any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to help you get started either finding or building your own community. And then, yeah, just remember to keep your focus off what is in front of you. A lot of times we focus on our problems so much that they become these huge mountains in our lives. And remember the eternal um, promises that God has given us, right? We are uh, sons and daughters of the Most High, right? And we're destined for heaven. And so just keep your focus on that. And yeah, that's all I have.
I love it, man. And of course, to help find you, all the links to his Instagram, Twitter, and and I don't want to forget this, one of the most important parts with Chris, Isaac the stud, his dog.
Yes,
His
Isaac.
dog and his smile, the two just are priceless together. I mean, they're like a match made in heaven almost. Like just like how you guys look and you're both, I mean, you'll be seeing this in the thumbnail and everything, but just like Isaac, just his giant smile, your giant smile. It's awesome. So I want to thank everyone for watching this. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Remember, this is Men of Action, helping men become 1% better in life. So a way they can go and reclaim their life and unleash that warrior within inside you that you can. So I hope everyone has a blessed day, and I'll see you guys.